far. The world's highest battleground, Siachen, no mention. Sir Creek, no mention. Indus Waters, no mention. Mumbai 2008, November, not mentioned. Afghanistan, not mentioned. Munise, the floor is yours. No, I'm not trying to influence the speaker. This is a malicious allegation just leveled by Suhail.
Well, I'd like to begin by saying thank you so much for having us. Kindle, thank you so much for inviting us. It's very well organized. We've had a great time so far, and Calcutta is beautiful. We've only seen it in the films. We finally get to see it, really. And to answer Mr. Mani Shankar Iyer's question, Jamaat-e-Islami has done even worse in the by-elections. So there it is, the conservatives in Pakistan are losing ground, and they had 2 seats previously, but they are losing ground very fast. Having said that, all our political parties, whether that be the People's Party, the Nawaz Sharif-led party, or the previously Musharraf's King's Party, in all their manifestos, they wanted peace with India. That was very high on the agenda, and it was also on the agenda of the Jamaat-e-Islami. So it seems that politicians in our country are now convinced that peace is the only solution to move forward. It's something that suits them. But let me tell you a little story, because Pakistan and India, there are many stories, and it's only through stories sometimes I feel that I can understand the relationship between these 2 countries. After the Mumbai attacks, there was front page news that Pranab Mukherjee, at that time External Affairs Minister, had called up President Zardari warning that there will be detrimental repercussions to the Mumbai attacks. Now, when Pranab Mukherjee was asked that question by my colleague in NDTV here in Delhi, he refused. He said he made no call. So it went back and forth, and I interviewed the Prime Minister, and he confirmed that Pranab Mukherjee did in fact make that call. A few weeks went by, the mystery was not solved, and we discovered that somebody called Umar Sheikh, a wanted terrorist by India, now in a Pakistani jail, who was given over to Pakistan in the Kandahar hijacking case, later on went and was accused of killing Daniel Pearl, actually made that call through a cell phone that was available to him in jail. So it's hilarious in a way, but it shows to you that there are elements within Pakistan that do not want peace between these 2 countries, and they are probably helped or supported by people who have an interest in building animosity between these 2 countries. Having said that, I feel that having worked in your media, there is a lot of Pakistan that doesn't come through. There is a struggle in Pakistan that doesn't come through. I'll tell you another story, the story of the Information Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, previously called Northwest Frontier Province, which is bordering Afghanistan. We've had hundreds and thousands of deaths there. It's either the floods or the terror attacks, but definitely the people being killed every month, every week. Recently, his only son, his only child, 27-year-old, was shot down, completely brutally murdered by the Taliban. A few days before that, he had announced that we will continue to fight the war against terror, even if that means that we have to sacrifice our children. And the answer was that his son was killed. The next day there were floods, and he was back at a press conference dealing with the situation. He didn't even have time to mourn his son's death. That's the kind of terror that we are facing in parts of our country, where people are fighting genuinely to keep alive, to keep safe. It's not just ministers today that are fighting, because the party that this minister belongs to, over 100 of his workers just this year have been killed in target killings by the Taliban. It's women. Women reporters these days cannot go to work in that province, because they've been warned that if they do appear on television, acid will be thrown on their face. So they now sit behind the desk. Singers have actually moved out of Pakistan. They cannot sing in Pakistan. One of our famous singers, Gulzar Ahmed, who sang beautiful songs about flower girls in Peshawar, was actually shot, and he survived, but he has now moved to Karachi. So there is a struggle that is going on in Pakistan to keep alive, to keep staying alive, and I feel that that somewhere gets lost. When warmongering becomes through Mumbai attacks, when it becomes far stronger, it's very difficult for these weak voices to keep alive, to keep going. And there isn't much support coming from wiser voices like Manishankar Iyer Saab himself or many of you over here. We don't hear them. They get drowned in by the warmongering that takes place on television by the louder voices. I feel that in all of this, our destinies, as your Prime Minister once said, you can't choose your neighbors, our destinies are tied. Whether we want peace or we don't want peace, the reality is that our destinies are tied. There are divided families on either side. One of my first reports was when the Kashmir bus came in, and there were families that came, and there was this rickety bridge between the two Kashmirs, and there was both strong armies standing on the side, and there were these two twin brothers, very old, perhaps 80 years old, and they hadn't seen each other in the last 10 years, and they couldn't wait any longer for all the ceremony to be over. So they pushed the army aside and they ran towards each other, and there was a reporter there, and it was almost raining, and he said, "Aaj to asmaan ke aankh mein bhi pani aa gaya hai." And I thought to myself, what cruel countries these are, that they can keep brothers apart from each other. I saw the same thing when prisoners were exchanged on the borders. There were drums rolling, there was, all this fanfare. But when you saw the prisoners with no shoes on their feet, some of them brutally tortured on either side, I hung my head in shame. So I think the point is, in all of this, is that we have to find ways that we can actually meet together, that we can have some avenues open with each other. Let me tell you, I've worked in FATA areas long enough to know that these terrorists they're not confined to boundaries. They move from Pakistan to Afghanistan like the border actually doesn't exist. You have seen in your own experience with Mumbai that they moved into your cities like the boundaries never existed. They didn't need a visa. So then I ask our politicians, why are we then confined to borders and to conventional solutions when our enemies are not? If our realities are changing, why can't we change the solutions to suit the realities on the ground? And with the Americans pulling out of Afghanistan, there is going to be more turmoil in this region. Pakistan, India, they're all going to find a space where they can take their proxy war to, and they have taken that war to. So if America is not looking at this region as a regional solution, is not looking for a regional solution, how come we South Asians cannot look at this region and say, here we have terrorism, we have poverty, why can't we look at it as a regional solution? Why should Pakistan be isolated and say, well, that woman in Peshawar should deal with it alone? Why should she have to deal with it alone? If there are a mass of people sitting across the border that are like-minded, why are boundaries stopping them? Why are we getting weaker? And that's the cry that comes from Pakistan to you today. And that's our problem, our crisis in Pakistan. And we really hope that somewhere beyond the borders, beyond the Foreign Office, and beyond, cabinets and all of that, we can find space for ourselves that can strengthen our own point of view. I'd like to also end by saying that I do believe that politicians also realize this, that it is in the politicians' interest to have peace. One very senior politician in Pakistan said to me that if you want peace between India and Pakistan, you have to take it outside of the Foreign Office. So you have to understand Pakistan. Pakistan has not had an easy run. We've had dictatorships, and even now the dictatorial forces are fighting the democratic forces. There is a battle within that's happening. We saw that just recently when David Cameron came here and he made a remark about Pakistan. President Zardari actually did not cancel his trip and continued with his trip to the United Kingdom. but the ISI chief did cancel his trip. So there are clear divisions that have emerged within Pakistan, divisions that we are fighting very, very hard. We are up against many forces that have vested interest, and at the same time, we are also trying to understand where the dust will settle, what will happen to our cities once the war is over. And I hope that in those times, the rest of South Asia can be patient, can extend perhaps an olive branch to all those that are suffering so badly in Pakistan. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much, Munize, and thank you very much not only for making such a moving presentation, thank you for